What is up, guys? Doing another one down specialty build. Today we're taking a look at Hitman / John Wick. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at the loadout that we're using. Using the Desert Fox sniper rifle, because it is a John Wick character pack weapon, not a character pack weapon, it's the John Wick weapon pack. Okay. The contractor pistol. This is the pistol that John Wick primarily used in his movies, the Heckler & Koch P30 or something like that. I don't know. I'm probably wrong. I'm trying to remember that off the top of my head. I know better than to try to say things like that. But anyway, this is the pistol he used in the movies. No, it is not modded like the one he used in the movies. I modded a little bit to be more game appropriate, so sorry about that. Using the pen, which is actually a pencil. I don't know why it's called the pen when it's clearly a pencil, but whatever. Throwing knife melee, which also came from the John Wick pack. Using the Hitman perk deck. First aid kits. Let's go ahead and look at our weapon mods really quickly. We're using the silenced barrel, a concealment modifier, no gadget, and oh no, I'm sorry, I lied. There is a gadget. It is the 45-degree red dot sight, and no sight. Now, originally both these weapons were supposed to be concealed for a build that actually had more to do with crits, but I'll talk a little bit more about that when I actually get into the video and stuff like that. So we'll go ahead and go back to looking at contractor. We have the Champion's suppressor, concealment boost, no gadget, extended magazine, and the tritium sights. Let's go ahead and look at the skills that we're using. Of course, first aid kits, converts. Picked up aggressive reload, aced, and high value target to help out with the damage partially to help with the reload speed and the damage that the Desert Fox was doing. Turned out to be pretty useful. I picked up ICTV because although no, John Wick as a character would probably not wear an ICTV and he would just be hardcore and wear his suit. Sadly, I tried several runs with a suit and I would get really far, except I had to play very, 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 very well. And as typical of me, it's late at night when I was recording this and I was getting tired, and I'm like, I'm getting tired of doing this over and over again. I had one skill point remaining and I didn't even spend it in the build. So if you want to do this build, you're going to have a skill point left over to put wherever you darn well please. And I probably would have put it in martial arts or something. Anyway. Picked up shockproof, hate tasers, specialized killing, do more damage with silencers, and picked up some pistol skills so I could make the contractor a little more useful to some degree anyway. At the end of the day, Hitman is just more effective with ICTV. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at the gameplay. So to start things off, Hitman is a perk deck that in concept should be very useful, particularly for one down. However, in execution, it doesn't quite come up to par. What do I mean in particular by that? So the Hitman perk deck gives you bonuses to akimbo weapons in the terms of ammo efficiency and stability. It also gives you bonuses in the terms of armor regeneration time. I don't know the exact time that you can cut it down to if you take in every single possible source of armor regen time that you could possibly get. So things like liquid armor from Armorer, and shock and awe basic, which I did have in this build. Resilience basic, and different things like that. You should be able to see my armor recovery time while I'm playing. However, no matter what the circumstance, your armor is going to recover 1.5 seconds after it's been broken. That is one of the cards from Hitman, which is actually a really good card. So the issue is, Hitman has no other defensive bonuses other than armor regeneration time and the 1.5 seconds, which makes armor gating with it extraordinarily effective. However, you get no armor buff. Actually, you used to get an armor decrease until they changed it several months ago. And was one of the few perk decks to actually give you a decrease in something while giving you a marginal increase in something else. Anarchist is like that. However, the enormous boost that you get in your armor was compensated by taking quite a portion of your health. So I guess, in a sense, Anarchist is really not the only one that does that now, I don't think, but one of the few. But Hitman used to take away your armor in exchange for armor regeneration time, and it was basically made for armor gating. On paper, it sounds good. In execution, like I was saying, not so great. what I commonly refer to as cushion in perk decks, which is the ability to not always if you as a player get caught slipping, but if someone sneaks up behind you, if you go around a corner and you just get two-shot by somebody, so on and so forth. If a perk deck doesn't allow you to be able to protect yourself from that in some way, it's not a very good defensive perk deck, at least not in the terms of one down. So something like Rogue gives you a flat chance to ignore damage. Kingpin gives you a health boost, and you have the Injector. Sicario has dodge chance and the smoke bombs. Anarchist and Armorer, as well as giving you extra armor, also give you 2-second invulnerability grace periods every 15 seconds once your armor breaks, and so on and so forth. There are little things that allow you to have enough reaction time to get yourself back into cover or put yourself in a situation where you can better yourself and ready yourself. However, perk decks such as, well, even like Ex-President to an extent had that as a perk deck. It had a small dodge chance, and you get your health back once your armor recharges. However, your armor has to recharge first before you get that health back. I talked about that in my Bodhi build video. Regardless, for Hitman, although your armor regeneration time is really fast, it's kinda like not super good in the sense that there's no cushion. You can still be, I don't think you can be two-shot, or at least not from what I've experienced. You can get really close to two-shot, probably like three-shot. 1 to break the armor, and 2 for the health, or depending on the unit, 1 for your health. And it was very problematic. Hitman is, as I've said with several other perk decks, is on the cusp of being good. Although Hitman doesn't have a problem with the numbers, Hitman has a problem with simply just not having any appropriate abilities to help assist in its survivability. The armor regen time, although extraordinarily useful and is a great idea for a perk deck, it seems like something that should be supplementary to something else within the perk deck. Whether that could be a small flat dodge chance, not something to the extent of like Rogue, but something more in line with the flat rate of like Ex-President or Sicario, or maybe give it a invulnerability grace period such as with Armorer or Anarchist, or something new entirely. I'm sure there are plenty of good ideas that people can come up with, developers can come up with, and if I decided to put the thought into it, maybe even I could come up with. However, as it stands right now, the issue is that Hitman just doesn't have that little bit of extra something that would make it a bit more defensive, which is what perk decks are supposed to be. Perk decks are supposed to be supportive and defensive boosts to either you or yourself and your team. And although Hitman does have that to a small extent, one of its cards is completely devoted to giving you bonuses and akimbo skills. And although that's not necessarily a bad thing, it's a unique thing amongst perk decks. Seeing how no other perk deck has any sort of like direct weapon bust as far as a direct weapon class goes. Now, Muscle used to. It used to be tied to like LMGs, sniper rifles, and like maybe, I forgot what the third weapon type was, maybe SMGs or something, but Muscle used to require a certain weapon type in order to have Panic used with it. However, they changed that a long time ago. And instead of taking that away from Hitman and adding something else to the card, instead they added, something else entirely. I would have used akimbo weapons with this Hitman build, except I didn't want to use akimbo contractors. I would have, because I wanted to use like one of the sniper rifles, because I felt there wasn't a good John Wick secondary aside from like the Jackal, and then I wouldn't have had really anything to deal with shields super effectively. I could have got Shock and Awe aced because I did end up running an ICTV build. However, that's just not the build I wanted to run with. Regardless, throwing knives are excellent. By the way, I just want to throw that in there. But Hitman is just missing that little bit of extra cushion that can make it a whole lot better. I was reading something in the long guide not too long ago, and I'm pretty sure that no matter how low your armor regeneration time actually becomes, and this might have been something I misread, so if anybody knows something about this, please tell me. I'm going to go back and I'm going to reread the armor regen section just to make sure, but I'll do that after this, and I'll like maybe update in the description or in a comment or something so people can see it, like pin a comment at the top or whatever. If I'm, incorrect and I need to correct myself. However, I believe I read something along the lines of there is always a 1-second delay before your armor will actually start the recharge timer process. So there's always going to be a second of recharge time anyway. So even if you could get you know, your armor regen time extraordinarily low with a combination of crew buffs, player skills, and so forth, it's never going to be instantaneous. There's always going to be at least a second combined with the amount of time it would take for your armor to actually recharge. Because of that mechanic, Hitman suffers a little bit of, not really a nerf, but that's kind of one of the downfalls of it. I really feel like if Hitman had invulnerability period cooldown, kind of like the other armor builds did, it'd be pretty nice. Stuff like that. I did use ICTV. I mentioned like getting 2-shot earlier. That was more in line with like the suit as opposed to the ICTV. I did pick up the ICTV so I could take chip damage like I did from that unit right there, who don't do as much damage as the heavy swats. The heavy swats would completely eviscerate me if I didn't deal with them as quickly as possible. Thankfully, the Desert Fox allowed me to one-shot them in the head. It did enough damage to do that, so I was pretty happy about that. But yeah, Hitman is a perk deck I would actually like to use. And I have used it on 1-down. I use it with Jimmy and I used to joke around and do 1-down runs with, where both of us would use Hitman as our main perk deck. So, I mean, if you're just normally using Hitman and you're playing a very defensive heist, there's good cover and you can armor gate pretty effectively, Hitman's actually a pretty good perk deck in that regards. However, there's just nothing that can really cushion you. Once you have to like go out in the open and you have to cross an area and there's not a way to like move from cover to cover or move super carefully, you're gonna be in a pickle. So it would require a lot of tight coordination with your teammates, or just simply waiting for assault fades, or assault fades, or just the assault wave to end in general. It's not impossible to survive sticky situations. That just becomes a little more difficult than it would be with other perk decks. So for Hitman in general, I think it definitely could be better. I feel like if it doesn't have to be any major modifications. I mean, the concept could stay exactly the same and just give it some little bit of extra oomph, and it would actually be a pretty decent perk deck. I don't know that it would be anything like in the line of the better perk decks. However, it would definitely be a more usable one if it just had that little bit of extra something. So perk decks have been getting some love recently. Hopefully, we'll see some fly the way of Hitman. Hitman has always been a topic of infamous discussion among the player base, who have often regarded Hitman to be the worst perk deck in the game by far. It's not the absolute worst, and it has potential. I want to use that word's probably the best way to describe Hitman. Hitman has potential, however, it just simply cannot stand up with some of the other perk decks in its current state of balance. So, thus the reason I'm doing a pretty straightforward Ukrainian job. I was trying to do some other more difficult heists, but it would really just be too much, to be quite honest with you. I'm not going to say it was impossible, and given enough tries and enough gumption, I probably could have done a slightly harder heist. However, it really would have been a pain in the butt, and I probably wouldn't have had a lot of fun. So, surprisingly, one of these videos I'm going to do is going to be for a Clover build or a Burglar build, and I am going to be using it for Loud, and believe it or not, I actually think that's going to perform better in Loud than Hitman did, for some pretty funny reasons that I'll talk about in that video. But I do wish Hitman was a bit better. I don't feel like it does our boy John Wick justice, considering he's, supposed to be Baba Yaga, but it's just kind of a bummer. Hitman and Sociopath, as I think I've talked about Sociopath quite a bit before, are two perk decks that I always wanted to see fall into great usability because I really like the concepts, the ideas, and the characters tied behind them. However, they just never really broke to par. I, of course, am a fan of the idea of all perk decks being usable in some way, shape, or form. Either having some utility or having great defense or having some little niche use, like using Yakuza for the speed bonus in stealth. I do that pretty frequently. So, I'd like to see that happen to more perk decks. Hitman, especially Hitman, deserves love after all the others. It's been the most useless one for the longest time. And I really wish it would get some love from Overkill. But, regardless, I managed to slog through this run relatively simply. And as usual, thank you guys so much for watching.